Assassin's Creed is a popular historical action-adventure video game franchise, having sold over 200 million copies. Starting in 2007 with the release of Assassin's Creed, the franchise has spawned 14 main and 17 side games, along with books, a movie, board games, and more. The series follows the centuries-long struggle between the Brotherhood of Assassins and the Templar Order for control of the Pieces of Eden, artifacts from superior beings that came before humans in the Assassin's Creed universe. With the game set throughout different periods of history, players get to explore an intertwined world of historical events, historical fiction, and science fiction. Publisher and developer Ubisoft's tagline for AC is "History is our playground." Known for a while for its very outspoken male fanbase, which has shifted as the games have continued in a new direction, moving towards non-linear open-world RPGs and away from linear story, stealth-focused action-adventure video games, and have also introduced a more diverse cast of characters, sometimes including the option to play as a female version of the main character. This podcast series is for a university assignment where I'm researching the evolving representation of women in the Assassin's Creed franchise to better understand shifts of representation in the video game industry and how fans interact with it. This series will deep dive on specific case studies of women in the AC franchise, and so I will provide an overview of the games and their female representation that we are skimming over. Since this is the first episode, I will be skimming over AC 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, and 3 before diving deeper into Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation and its main character Aveline. I won't be talking about the modern day story and characters, instead focusing on the historical characters and storylines that we spend more time with. Released for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in 2007, Assassin's Creed follows the modern-day Desmond Miles, who uses a machine called the Animus to relive the memories of his ancestor Altair. These are set in a fictionalized 1191. The game mostly takes place during the Third Crusades in the Holy Land, or Damascus, Acre, and Jerusalem. The game introduces the age-old struggle between the Assassin Brotherhood, who fight for freedom and peace, and the Templar Order, who fight for control and order. Both are inspired by real historical groups. The main story of the game is for Altair to regain his honor and status within the Assassin Brotherhood by assassinating 9 targets across the Holy Land. Assassin's Creed 1 is shorter and has less story depth than the later games. In the historical storyline, there is only one notable female character, Maria Thorpe, a fictional Englishwoman who acts as a decoy for Robert de Saboul, only to be spared by the player character Altair. In the extended universe, she later goes on to marry Altair, but her role in the game itself is very limited. This positions Maria as a tokenized figure to provide emotional development for Altair and follows industry norms of reducing female characters to present the heroic actions of the male characters. Women during this time had limited freedom and agency. There are also not many historical records of women from this time, so whether consciously or not, the developers did not include any other female characters in the historical segment. Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations, also known as the Ezio trilogy, take place during the Italian Renaissance, and through modern-day framing, follow Ezio Auditore di Firenze as he joins the Assassin Brotherhood and seeks revenge for the death of his father and brothers. The games take place across many Italian cities, including Florence and Venice, released in 2009, 2010, and 2011 respectively. The games were huge hits and were what really cemented the franchise, often still many fans' favourite games. With a new platform, the stories are longer and more fleshed out, the worlds are bigger, and the gameplay has been improved upon from Assassin's Creed 1. There are many iconic and favourite female side characters in these games. However, as Ezio is the protagonist and perspective character, the female characters are strongly defined by their relationship to him. This is as romantic partners, sisters, allies, and maternal figures. This perpetuates character tropes of female identity being tied to what they offer the men in their life, and the inclusion of courtesans and seduction that show the female sexuality as mechanics and gameplay and plot tools for the male protagonist rather than an expression of women's agency. So at first we're going to talk about Claudia Auditore, who's Ezio's sister. After the family suffers from the death of Ezio's brothers and father, Claudia and her mother move from Florence to the Tuscan countryside and join their uncle at the Auditore villa. In Assassin's Creed 2, Claudia plays a minor role. She's in charge of the finances of the villa. She experiences a lot of character growth in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, where she moves to Rome to help her brother liberate the city from Borgia control. She becomes madam of a brothel. She works to ally the Roman courtesans with her brother and other Italian assassins, and she later goes on to become an assassin herself. This is thought of as a very strong character arc over the games for her. Next is Caterina Sforza, who's a real historical figure that Assassin's Creed features. She is a fiery character who is vocal about her power and sexuality. She has some moments that are based on historical legends of Caterina, including one based on an account from Niccolo Machiavelli, in which during a mission in the game, the Orsi threaten to murder her children that they have taken hostage, to which she replies, "Bastards, you think you can threaten me? I'll give you nothing. You want my children? Take them. I have the instrument to make more," and proceeds to lift up her skirts to flash them. Other conversation with Caterina in the game reveal her strong, upspoken character, showing that having powerful and brave female characters can be realistic and historically accurate. However, in Brotherhood, they do push her into a damsel in distress role when she is captured by the Borgia and imprisoned. Ezio, being the strong male lead, breaks into the castle, and the game's mission requires the player to carry her out. Caterina Sforza is one of the strongest women in this era, and yet somehow she finds a way, or she is pushed into playing the role of the damsel in need of a strong man to save her. We also have Paola of La Rosa Colta, the owner of a brothel in Florence. She befriends Ezio and hides him in her brothel after his family's death and his subsequent fugitive status. Brothels were quite common in Renaissance Italy, sometimes legal, sometimes not, depending on who was in charge. During the game's setting of 15th century Florence, public brothels were licensed through the Florentine Office of Decency. The fees collected from the brothels went into the public trust, and prostitution became just another aspect of life. However, the brothels in real life were owned almost entirely by men when legal. Women sometimes had management positions, which we later see with Claudia. And they often ran the business on behalf of the owner. However, in times when brothels were illegal, it was much more common to see women as owners. But it is seen as unlikely at this time that Paola would have had the capabilities to own such an establishment. It's interesting that the game developers made a woman the founder and owner of the brothel that we interact with in the game. Is this to give the appearance that the work is better because a woman is in charge? Were they worried about how it would look otherwise? And finally, in Revelations, we are introduced to Sofia Sator, who is the love interest for Ezio Auditore in the later stages of his life. She is quite an intelligent and passionate character. However, her most important part in the story is when she also becomes the stereotypical damsel in distress, and this is written to her falling deeper in love with Ezio after he saves her. Assassin's Creed 3 follows Raduna Gaydon, or Connor, of Mohawk and British descent during the mid to late 18th century, and notably the American Revolution. After his village is attacked, he is trained by the Assassin Brotherhood, and the story ties in personal revenge, indigenous survival, and involvement in major historical events of the Revolutionary era. The game features very few female characters. The only notable main female character featured is Connor's mum, Carney Tio. She is a key figure to Connor, embodying indigenous familial responsibilities and spiritual ties to community. She is what drives Connor's commitment and motivation to protecting people and land. Otherwise, there is a few indigenous women who inhabit roles of relatives, village members, and cultural figures. They provide social and ritual context and represent everyday survival strategies within community life. And there are also colonial and urban women featured who appear as settlers, wives, household figures, courtesans, tavern workers, and market women. They are designed to fill out the world, create atmosphere, and present an accurate landscape, as well as providing quests or information. They don't have their own key story moments. Assassin's Creed 3 contains relatively few established female characters. The historical setting and the game's focus on large-scale military and political events contribute to this distribution of roles, but it's still quite sad to see less women involved in the story following the Ezio trilogy. Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation was released as a companion game to Assassin's Creed 3 for the handheld PlayStation Vita in 2012. The game is set in 18th century French Louisiana and follows Aveline de Grandpré, who is of Creole descent. This was the first AC game to feature a female protagonist that strayed from industry norms of the time, which tended to sideline female characters or add female skins to male NPC avatars. The game has since been remastered and published alongside Assassin's Creed 3 on newer mainline consoles, including Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, PC, and PlayStation 4. The initial exclusive release both challenges and reinforces the industry norms, as Aveline, being a black female lead, was a positive change, and seen as very progressive. However, she was relegated to the sidelines of both the franchise story and a less popular console. Aveline has a unique persona system not seen in other Assassin's Creed games. This allows players to navigate the different intersections of race, gender, and class during colonial New Orleans. With different skill sets, levels of anonymity, and freedom of movement, players are encouraged to utilize these different identities that Aveline, as a mixed-race woman, inhabits to complete different types of missions. These include her lady outfit, which represents her as an innocent daughter of a wealthy French merchant, an assassin in typical Assassin's Creed pants and coat, and also an enslaved person in baggy work clothes. This is an interesting attempt to navigate the complexities in identity a woman like Aveline would have had, although it does ignore the realities that black women would not be accepted into upper white society, even despite their white male parentage. While code switching is often something minority groups do to fit in with the dominant group, and this mechanic is an attempt to highlight this unique experience, this can come across as insensitive towards the lived difficulties of women of colour, past and present, almost simplifying their navigation of the world and the impact that their gender and ethnicity have on this. The ignorance of how actual free black women could not participate in upper white society can also be read as reshaping and smoothing over historical experiences. almost selectively using her identity when it suits the creators, and ignoring the parts that don't align with story beats, reserving femininity for when she's being perceived as white. Frustration has marred fan reaction to Aveline and Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation in many aspects since its release. Analysis of forums, comments, and news articles reveals key narratives of reactions amongst Assassin's Creed fans and the games industry. There was definitely excitement at the groundbreaking inclusion of a black female main character in a popular AAA franchise. However, many responded to the limited release on a smaller console as giving Aveline a secondary role in the franchise. Some also responded to this with the opinion that Ubisoft was trying to shoehorn diverse leads into the franchise, and this was supported by the limited marketing for the game. The rediscovery, in quotes, of the game as it has been re-released for newer consoles has seen favourable opinions rise, as people reminisce about this period of the franchise, and kind of celebrate the representation that was so unique at the time. Back to the story. Philip Aveline's white father marries a white woman, Madeline, after he starts to lose business. Together they raise Aveline, and her mother Janine disappears from the picture. The game offers no criticism of this, however does employ the evil stepmother stereotype. It is revealed later in the game that Madeline is a Templar leader, the series' first real female antagonist. Her positioning herself as Aveline's guardian and protector, the drive to have Aveline join the Templar Order, and her desire for power perpetuates the evil stepmother trope. This subsequently enforces racialized respectability politics, colonial class hierarchies, and normative femininity. Unlike traditional stereotyping, the game gives her agency and motive with moments of ambiguity. However, Madeline is still reinforcing a common misogynistic trope, and when understanding the story through intersectionality, her actions are read in relation to these systems of racialized gendered power, not just personal gain or spite. It is really interesting to compare how Aveline and Connor, the main game protagonists, are portrayed and represented. They are both mixed race, and while Aveline's identity is explored through social spheres, Connor's identity is framed through combat, duty, and politics. Playable differences produce distinct gendered understandings of their characters. Playing as Aveline gets players to focus on stealth, situational analysis, and code switching, while playing as Connor focuses more on placing players in direct confrontation missions and building combat skills. The games position Aveline's narrative and missions within labor structures that are traditionally coded as feminine. This is market trade, domestic arrangements, caregiving networks, and sex work adjacent social economies. The game will frame these occupations as both constraints and resources, much like how it positions Aveline's societal position. This work is also very much of the private and domestic spheres, which are often, especially in the game's setting, not recognized or celebrated. This is unlike Connor's narrative, which celebrates the very masculine and publicly recognized labor of battles and politics. His own social role is validated through public performance, community recognition, and formal political recognition. This shows the games both presenting and normalizing gender divisions of labor, while showing how performing these and meeting expectations can be used to gain leverage, hide their real mission, and benefit the characters. This was my exploration of Aveline from Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation through the lens of cultural feminist studies and fan studies.